I am Joe Zender, one of the co-founders of PivIT. Our goal today is to dialogue a bit with you on the IT challenges we've witnessed in the past couple of years, share a few examples on how PivIT's services team helped our customers come up with creative scenarios, and ultimately explore we can help relieve some of the pressure you have on your upcoming initiatives. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Q&A. Attendees are muted, so if you do have a question at any point during our conversation, feel free to drop your comment in the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. You'll also receive a recording of this today, which we'll send out at the end of the conversation. That's it. Now, let's get the conversation started by introducing Erin Olger. Erin is one of our rockstar sales reps here at PivIT. She's been in the industry close to 2 decades now. As I get to introduce her today, I'm going to make the comparison for her. I'm going to compare somewhere between Leonardo da Vinci and Rocky Balboa. Wow, quite a comparison. Rocky Balboa, there is nobody you want in your court or corner more than Erin. If she's working with you, she's going to fight to the end for you and is loyal in all scenarios. Leonardo da Vinci, she has created some of the most unique ideas and solutions to some of the wildest IT challenges in the 2 decades that I've been doing this. These aren't just ideas that she's recreating from someone else. These are real inventions in my mind. She makes them up, she comes with on her own, and then she helps us deploy it. So Rocky and Leonardo, that's Erin.
Thanks, Joe. I don't really know how to answer that one, but appreciate the intro. Thank you to the attendees for being here. And yeah, look forward to presenting some real world solutions to you all and ways to lower your costs around professional services.
Great. The second part of this dream team on the panel today is Al Karras. Al is our Director of Global Operations, but that's only scratching the surface on what he does for our clients every day. Since again, today is my day for introductions, I get to keep going. I recently introduced my kids to the Karate Kid movies from my youth. In this intro, Al is most closely related to Mr. Miyagi. Firstly, he's a global logistics and field engineering karate sensei. He knows everything about getting equipment anywhere in the globe. Nobody comes close to his skills there. And his dojo of kick-ass engineers of every skill set is deep and wide, and he can get any of these little ninjas, he can get them into any major market around the planet. No problem.
Thank you, Joe. Great to meet everybody. Glad you guys all joined. Yeah, once again, trying to follow up that intro is going to be tough to beat, but I appreciate the kind words. And Joe, you know, going off of that, Joe's been with us. He's one of the co-founders here at PivIT, and he's been in the industry over 20 years. And so, you know, he brings a lot of knowledge and expertise in multiple different divisions. But as you can see, he's got a really unique, fun side to him, and that helps, you know, just bleed right into creating unique solutions for customers, you know, based on their needs and their pain points. And so, I think with this group here, we bring a lot of value to the table, and hopefully we can, you know, help provide that to you and relieve some of these pain points you might have internally. Thanks, Joe.
You bet. Great. So now that we've accurately set the stage for your panel today, let's dive in. The past couple of years has changed the entire landscape for just about every IT organization to many different degrees. Everything from supply chain issues and the impact these delays have had on your deployments, all the way down to available IT resources to do the actual work when these projects are ready to go. We have the Great Resignation. We have corporate positions on travel restrictions. And we also have personal positions on your team's desire to actually travel. Working remote from home, it's the new way to work. IT teams are lean, and available budget is in many times scarce. So today we have 2 stories that we wanted to share with you where our team helped create a unique Plan B solution that they couldn't get elsewhere from their other channels or their other VARs. So the first one, the first story I've got today, it's one of our existing customers, which this project was the first project that we worked on with. They're a large global software company that has been aggressively acquiring other companies. Couple challenges that they had. Most of these acquisitions were for companies that have a completely different network landscape. And most of these companies had multiple offices around the world. Standardization of the network was a top priority. They had a lean team, and COVID created havoc on international travel to configure and deploy these network rip and replace projects. Most of the equipment was being hit with the supply chain issues. So most of the hardware that they did receive was sitting on the network team's kitchen tables, as they weren't allowed back in the office yet. What did we propose? Our proposition was simple. Send everything to us, let us stage it, ship it, and deploy it. Simple, right? There's a lot that went into that, and no one else came up with these options. So Al has a couple things here, so I'll probably go high level, but Al, feel free to interrupt me at any time. So the first thing we had to do, whatever equipment they had, we just said, just ship it to us. We don't care where you bought it, whatever, whatever type of hardware it was, just send it to us. So we sent it to Al's team there in Portland, which is where our primary US staging facility is. So they sent us all their Palo Alto firewalls and their Nimble storage arrays. They were still waiting on all their Cisco network infrastructure, and they were still waiting on all their Dell servers, and there was no end in sight on when that equipment was going to arrive. So our sourcing team on this particular project found all of their Cisco equipment and all of those Dell servers, and have found it within 7 days where they could have it all there, which simplified, obviously, when you talk about staging. Al, talk a little bit about staging and kind of how you set that up for this customer.
Sure. Yeah, this was a cool one too, because we had multiple different OEMs involved. The customer had already secured the Palo Alto security devices. The Nimble storage was on the way, and then, like Joe mentioned, we were able to secure the Dell servers and then all of the Cisco infrastructure, so the switches and then all the wireless. And so typically, the way that this would work is everything gets centralized here at our distribution center up in Oregon, and we work directly with the customer on, building the network diagram if that hasn't already been created on their end, and then yep, there's an example there for this particular project. And then we determine, the next step would be getting the cabling matrix. And so identifying exactly how they want each device cabled, which ports they're connected to. And then we proceed with racking all the equipment, cabling it up to match their network diagram and their cabling matrix. And then we give them secure VPN remote access to configure the equipment themselves. Some of these configurations are proprietary, and so we give that back to the customer and let them configure it at their own leisure. Sometimes engineers aren't in the same time zone, they're in different countries. And so we basically can leave this equipment hooked up 24 hours a day. The customer can remote in, configure it, while we're sleeping, over the weekend, whatever works for their timeline. And then once everything is confirmed good to go, we label everything, whether it's giving the hardware specific system names. We label all the cables so that when it arrives on site, it's plug and play. And for this particular project, we took everything down, boxed it up, staged it on a pallet, and then had it shipped to Australia, where it was completely hands-off for the customer, what we call a white glove service. So we exported it out of the United States, had it imported on behalf of PivIT into Australia, and then delivered directly to the customer's site, where we had engineers waiting on site to receive the equipment. And then they basically did a full install that Saturday and Sunday, had the site up and running, and engineers had their bags packed and they were ready to fly out Sunday night. So really successful project. And really the only time the customer got involved was to configure their own equipment, and we handled everything else. So that was really cool.
That is awesome. The one other thing which I hear a lot in customer, conversations that I have frequently, that logistics piece, and in this particular scenario, Al, your team handled full importation. So as a software company, they have no logistics. They didn't have a logistics team. They didn't know how to move the gear in there and who to answer questions and whatnot. And so you, being the Mr. Miyagi of international logistics, your team of ninjas on site, obviously you handled that white glove service so that in all reality, the company, they didn't have to deal with anything getting it clear. And so I've seen lots of stories, which we only get to talk about, a couple today, but all the hard to reach countries, even easy countries or whatnot, basically solving that piece for these organizations that don't have lots of experience in shipping international and how to make sure your stuff doesn't get stuck. And then you had a team on site. So there was a lot of huge wins here that I know that were huge pain points, which falls in line of what makes you the sensei of international logistics. So
Thanks, Jeff.
you bet. So second story that we have today. Second story is a little bit different, just as challenging. And as we bring in Rocky Balboa, Leonardo da Vinci, Erin Olgren, she's got a lot of the details here. And this was one of those scenarios where there were so many things that we had to create for this organization. But this company, it's probably one of the most recognizable name brands in the beverage industry globally. So everyone has seen their beverages. They had a wild mixture of legacy equipment around the planet and a maintenance strategy that was way out of balance, expensive, and confusing. They had scarce on-site resources at their facilities when IT issues did arise. And they had a large, broad initiative to tighten up both the costs, internal visibility, and ultimately their infrastructure reliability. So this is where Erin started in that relationship. That is the backdrop for when she came to the table. Erin, do you have any more? You want to throw in any little nuggets of pain
Sure,
or solutions or whatnot there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a marquee client for me and someone that we take very good care of. They first came to us with looking to lower their OpEx, right? They were spending way too much money on their OEM maintenance contracts. And as we dug into it, we realized that much of that was spent on not only, the hardware, the SLA hardware replacement for our next business day, but they also had field services support tagged onto it because just in North America alone, they have over 300 sites. And at those locations, they don't have local IT resources. So they've just always been paying for those OEM maintenance contracts with the field services support. So what PivIT did, what we did is we came in and we offered them another solution. We said, hey, why don't you drop that field services support on your OEM maintenance, run that through us. We gave them a pre-agreed to rate card where we negotiated it. We worked out an MSA. It is SLA based, so the field engineering dispatch response time is guaranteed. And they're not overpaying for what could be field engineering support that they don't even need. So they ended up saving, I think, close to $2 million just in dropping that field services support off of their OEM maintenance contracts and going with us.
Wow.
What that ended up doing is our field engineers are in their facilities, right? A lot of them, they're manufacturing. So some of them are hostile environments. So they had to go through background checks and safety trainings and all of that, which we do. And then we created a deeper engagement with them. So we do everything now from wireless site surveys, implementation. We do office moves as they're consolidating and a lot of their offices are minimizing. And so it's kind of led into a much deeper engagement, but it all started with something they hadn't even really thought of. And that was, what if we just go into a different field service, SmartHands initiative model that is not tied to all these OEM maintenance contracts? And we support across all OEMs for them. So not just Cisco, but NetApp, Hitachi, Dell, HP, IBM. And so it's led into a really deep engagement that's been very successful. And like I said, it was uncovering some extreme cost savings for them and looking outside of the typical channel.
That's a good one. And I know we're just scratching the surface on that one. So as we've seen that relationship grow and foster and the challenges and unique, the ever-changing landscape there. So great. Aaron, thank you. Now let's see if there's any questions. Do we have any questions out there? Let me see. I'm supposed to click on the Q&A section here, which Q&A, there we go. Great. This one comes from Derek. Are there any restrictions PivIT has? You mentioned Australia. Are there countries you cannot service? Short answer is if the US, if they're not on a list that the US says you are not allowed to work with, we can move equipment into any one of those countries. So as long as those countries are not on that list of where the US is not allowed to interact with, then we're good to go. So I'll bring up Brazil, we're good. India, we're good. China, we're good. Those are three probably the most challenging and expensive ones where there's a ridiculous amount of logistics. But we can get we can move equipment in and out of those countries. We have internal field service engineering resources. So if you do need resources in country and any of those, plus the whole, the continents that they're a part of, which also have different challenges. So we can do that.
I can piggyback off that too, Joe.
Okay.
And some of the situations that we've seen as well is, customers may not have physical representation in these countries. And so we could be shipping to data centers where they don't have, entities set up within these countries. And so, running into IOR and compliance issues, things like that, we can fully support and handle all of that for the customer. And so we have a strategic partner who has the ability to act as the IOR in getting into these tough, what we consider red lane markets, like the India and the Brazil, those tougher ones where it's hard to just wrap your head around, where do I start, right? Let us bear that burden for you and help you access those markets. We're well familiar with how, what needs to happen and how to navigate them. So no restrictions there as far as accessing the rest of the world for you.
Another question I have here is how quickly can PivIT have an engineer on site? There's really there's really two answers to that question. One, if we have kind of nothing in place or we don't have like a contract or guaranteed SLA in place for that field engineer. So that's one area. So if we coordinate guaranteed SLA, so guaranteed next business day or guaranteed 4 hour on a field service engineer, it's next business day or 4 hour. And then we'll call it the ad hoc approach. Whereas if it's a site where you just need a resource to kind of go on site, you don't feel like signing a contract or having a monthly retainer or anything like that, then in general, as long as it's a major market in the world, in the countries where we're allowed to operate within, then typically 48 to 72 hours. And the process on that, what that process looks like is ideally, so say, for example, you say, great, I need a guy in Singapore on Tuesday, and today's Wednesday or whatnot. We typically want to jump on a call with you, find out a little bit more information about the site, the restrictions, the total scope of work, and essentially kind of paint a picture on what that engineer is going to walk into. So we can typically write out a statement of work. But like, for example, today, so if you did say, I need a guy in Singapore on Saturday, we could do Saturday, today being Wednesday. And that's without doing anything complex in the meantime. So that goes for most major markets. This team of engineers typically are the same. They're these engineers in Al's dojo with skill sets ranging from systems to network to wireless to security, all the above. So depending on what exactly you're going to need, we've got guys in most major markets that can be deployed and turned on pretty quickly. Let's see, next question here. So I'm looking to decrease hardware. Do y'all do site consolidations? Yes, I would say that has kept us very busy the last 2 years in this massive change in landscape, change in office design, change in what offices look like these days, and obviously a blend of merging to the cloud and not. So we definitely can help with any of those consolidations. So as an example, so if which is probably a differentiator. Say for example, if you have an office that you realize that location, that region, you're going to go all remote for whatever reason, you're just going to shut down the office. You need someone to go on site and basically clear it all out. So our team can do all that. And as an additional benefit alongside of that, when we go into these sites, because we also are purchasing infrastructure from our clients, if it's a $20,000 bill of materials, but we realize there's about $10,000 worth of equipment there, we can either send that equipment back to you guys to redeploy elsewhere, or we can purchase that from you and either apply it towards the cost of the project or give it to you as an open credit or something like that. So some of that creativity is how we help projects be afforded where they may not have had a budget before.
And Joe, can I just jump in here really fast? So if you do have a decommission schedule where you're planning on upgrading hardware in the next year or so, and you're in the middle of like a multi-year maintenance contract, what we can do too is we can come in and support that hardware through our one-call platform, which is third-party maintenance, 4-hour replacement next business day. And we can do very creative contracts. So we can do month to month, we can do short-term, 6 months.
Yeah.
So if you come to us and say, hey, PivIT, our plan is to decommission this equipment. We just need a Band-Aid solution in the interim. And then at the end of that, when we do decommission it, we need you to come in. We need you to de-rack it. We need you to certify that data has been sanitized or destructed. We can do all of that. We can either do it on site or we can bring it back to our facility. And then we can give you any kind of credit back for that hardware. So to Joe's point too, you can also repurpose that equipment for a self-sparing model, and that can get really interesting, but there's a lot of ways that we can structure a creative solution so that you're not overpaying for OEM maintenance and then basically ripping out equipment that you're not getting any kind of credit for. So we can come in and help with that.
Great, love it. Next question. My team has a strong cloud initiative coming up Q4 and into 2023. Is there anything PivIT can do to assist in that process? Yes. So I even have a story that we did earlier this year. An organization was obviously moving, 90% to the cloud in terms of their infrastructure. They had 3 data centers here in the US, and as they were going to migrate everything, so there were 3 data centers spread out across the US. We shut down all 3 data centers, basically did all the data destruction on all the data that had to be destroyed, purchased back a bunch of their infrastructure because it was actually still relatively current infrastructure, so the servers, storage, and network. And then as we did all their inventories, because they didn't have an inventory of that list, we took that inventory list, figured out what they wanted back because they still had a small on-prem site there at their offices in California. So we peeled off that equipment, shipped that all back to them, and then we consumed the rest or destroyed what needed to be destroyed. So that cloud initiative, and we did it in a matter of about 6 weeks. So we can speed up those initiatives if needed, but shutting everything down. So anyone moving to the cloud, which is usually a hybrid approach these days, we can get creative in how to fund it, as well as make sure that repurpose what should be repurposed, and then let's put value or on the rest to make it easy for you guys, and our team will handle the whole thing. All right, let's see. I don't see any more questions. Maybe we'll give it another 15 seconds here.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Just while we wait to see if there's any other questions, one other plug I would just like to make out to our attendees is, and we kind of already touched on this a little bit with office moves, office minimization, right? That you don't have, if you have a hybrid strategy in terms of attendance, employee attendance, you might not need as much office space. You might have floating desks. One thing that we have become really equipped at and very good at is rolling out Zoom rooms. So if any attendees out there are in that space and we have bombs for small, medium, and large size rooms already built out. We can handle, lining up the electricians and all of the installation needed. So keep us in mind for that too, if that's something top of list.
That is very popular right now. You're a good rumor on that, Aaron.
We become experts.
Yeah, great. Well, obviously with everyone that's here today, panel, as well as all the attendees, thank you for joining us today. We hope you got a couple of takeaways or options you may not have known you could get from your team here at PivIT. If you do have any more questions or you need additional information, don't hesitate to hit up your PivIT rep. You can always email us at hello@pivotglobal.com or hit us up on any of our other websites, social medias, anything like that. Your time is valuable, and we're grateful you chose to spend it with us. Let's keep the conversations going. Please be on the lookout for a survey link shortly. We value and read every single comment. And obviously, as we kind of roll out each one of these webinars, if there's topics or anything else you guys want to hear more about, let us know when that is, and we'll come right back to you with as much information as you need. Thanks so much to Al and Aaron for joining us and providing us such insider secrets. Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Hey guys.